is responding to Trudeau's bait. Trudeau had a meeting with all the premiers. Danielle Smith called in virtually to the meeting, and she disagreed with the plan moving forward because the plan moving forward is a bad plan. And she said, it's a bad plan. We're not going to do that here in Alberta. And she said, I disagree. I'm not going to sign the communique. And Trudeau went forward with it anyway, and then is trying to use that division as a wedge. And he's saying, listen, Danielle Smith is either with us or she's the enemy. And Poilievre is either with us or he's with Danielle Smith, that enemy over there. It's on the nose that much. He says that. I think I'm almost directly paraphrasing him. So I'll show you that video. And that's pretty crazy stuff. I'll tell you that. Stupid, irresponsible statecraft by Trudeau. So people are pushing back on Justin Trudeau's idiocy. And that's nothing new. But, well, I'll show you that video. How the CRA is changing and charging capital gains tax already. And it's the Ways and Means motion. So I'll show you all of that. I didn't understand. I really honestly didn't understand how they could do this without it being passed through the House, and also with the prorogue. The prorogue is a little hinky, but yeah, they do that, and I'll show you how they do that and why they do that. So I thought I was interested, and I didn't know. So I thought you might be interested because you might not know. 13 years. They want 13 years for Pat King. This whole thing, the convoy was allowed to happen because they wanted to January 6th everybody on it. And they were going to throw everybody in jail and just take out all the freedom fighters and say, yeah, come, and then put them all in jail. And they're running into difficulties, right? 13 years. How long are they going? I thought Mischief was a 10-year sentence. And Pat King gets more than Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. That's crazy. Like, he was a road captain. He wasn't a leader at all. It just seems like they're going after him to throw the book at him. Sorry, my headphones keep getting caught in my microphone, and it's kind of annoying. So pretty crazy stuff. And Mark Carney, I've got a huge amount of stuff on Mark Carney today. We've got to talk about Mark Carney. We've got to talk about Mark Carney's leadership event. We've got to talk about Mark Carney stealing logos. We've got to talk about Mark Carney trying to get reporters arrested. We've got all sorts of crazy stuff going on. Really, honestly, truthfully, it's Mark Carney. There's a huge amount of stuff about Mark Carney. And like, spoiler alert on this, National Post reported in 2021, what Carney ultimately wants is a technocratic dictatorship justified by climate alarmism. And I think that's absolutely spot on accurate. And so we're being led by the nose by people who are trying to use technicalities to maintain their control in our government into Mark Carney's technocratic dictatorship vision of the future. And that's not great. I don't want that at all. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, Mel Joly has gone down to the United States to try and figure out this whole tariff thing before they hand off to Mark Carney, and Mel Joly loses her spot. And, her and Justin Trudeau ride off into the sunset or something. I don't know. Probably not. She's still married or something like that, isn't she? Anyway, Mel Joly says, when Canada and the U.S. work together, we're the strongest team in the world. During my meeting with leader John Thune and Lindsey Graham, I reiterated that the Canada-U.S. economic partnership and how we can continue to work together to secure our borders, or the strength of the Canada-U.S. economic partnership and how we can work together to secure our borders. And she's not talking to the right team. Like, Lindsey Graham is a no vote for RFK Jr. for health secretary. And I think Thune is like on the other side against Trump, but I could be wrong about that. But I'm pretty sure is he an anti-Trumper? Is he an outspoken anti-Trumper? Lindsey Graham is, I think, on the outs. I don't think Trump has actually named him or given him a nickname or anything to that effect at this point yet. But I don't think Lindsey Graham is on the inside with Trump helping craft the next 4 years. There's also rumors I've heard that they're going to derail the inauguration. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure the 20th is going to come and go without any kind of bump. But we'll see. Honestly, things are going to be crazy, I think. But maybe not crazy. Maybe totally just normal. Everything will be just totally fine. No is reporting breaking Jean Charest, Rachel Notley to join Justin Trudeau's Council on Canada-U.S. Relations. Oh my gosh. It's both. It's sinister and we all lose. And that's not great. So the members are as follows: Jean Charest, Rachel Notley, Stephen McNeil, David McNaughton, Stephen Verreau, Arlene Dickinson, Linda Hassenfratz. Linda Hassenfratz is from Linamar in Guelph. Lana Payne, Jody Thomas, Flavio Volpe, Tabitha Bull, Shenzrad Rafiti, Hazan Youssef, Hassan Youssef. I recognize that name, and I don't know why. Wes Hall, Martin Carn, Brian Topp, Tim Geisel, and Ambassador Kristen Hillerman. So those are the people who are going to be on the team, right? So that's terrible. Nobody wanted John Charest. Nobody wants Rachel Notley. These people are incompetent. NDP and Liberals, unbelievable. Let's talk about Danielle Smith and the Team Canada approach, which doesn't exist because Danielle Smith said no. And so Justin Trudeau really should have not gone ahead with this, but he's using this to his advantage. Mario says, people gullible enough to think that they can win a trade war against the United States after 9 years of Trudeau weakening the economy should not be in a position of leadership. I'm going to reiterate, I think that the powers that be, the globalists on one side, tried to and did succeed using Trudeau and bankrupting our country with bad spending, bad deals, battery plants, billions of dollars just flowing out of the country, Ukraine, Gaza, UN, NRA, all that stuff, all that money going out of the country, stifling the oil and gas, all that stuff has put us in a bad position financially. And I think the globalists, the people who are in charge of our government, wanted to use that weak financial position to force us into a central bank digital currency. They wanted to use that and say, oh no, Canada, you guys are so poor and things are so bad in your country right now that the only way to save it, like we can't actually be sane about things and get oil and stuff to market and be intelligent about how we run the country. No. The only solution is communism. Here is the central bank digital currency that we're going to force on you because of your weak financial position. So Trump came in, saw that weak financial position and said, basically, listen, Canada, we're already living in a situation where you're basically a state. I give you, Donald Trump, the United States, represents the United States, give you $200 billion a year. And that's untenable for somebody who's another country. But for somebody who's already a state, okay, no problem. And we've had this relationship for a while. We're already living in this configuration. We just have to make it official. I think that's what he's going to do. And that's why I think the markets aren't responding at all to Canada potentially being nuked with 25% tariffs on Monday. Like, the markets are fine. It seems fine. Right? Is the TSX collapsing today? Like, it just doesn't seem, it's no response whatsoever from the market. So that seems weird. Right? It just seems strange. So the markets are not collapsing. I think somebody's going to walk into a board office and say, hi, Canada, here's your economic situation. You can do all of this crazy stuff. And if you want to do all this crazy stuff, I'll let you, but it's going to be 25% tariffs and you're going to suffer until you agree to normalize under this situation here like this. And I think that we're not going to have a choice. I hope I'm wrong about all of that, but I don't think entering a trade war is going to yield saving Canada from Donald Trump's moving forward with his plan. So, and maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. Who knows, right? Anyway, I don't think that people who think that they can win a trade war against the United States instead of stopping the drugs, stopping the crime, and people coming across the border, I'd rather they just deal with the things that Donald Trump is asking for, right? But I think also that Donald Trump is going to do the 25% tariff in order to get what he wants anyway. So Roughneck says, this is Rich coming from a Canada last globalist first unemployed punk. This is Justin Trudeau saying, Danielle Smith, she's a traitor. Here we go.
I think it was really important yesterday as we met with first ministers from across the country that premiers have an opportunity to express the interests of their citizens, of their industry, of their area. Certainly, I don't blame Danielle Smith for speaking up for her industry. That's part of her job. But every single premier other than Danielle Smith then chose to put Canada first and say, but we're all part of Team Canada because what happens to any part of us happens to all of us, and we will be there to respond strongly, to fight for Canada, and to do it in a united way that makes sure that it's fair across all industries, across all regions. That was what we came together yesterday to do. I would actually like to point out to Danielle Smith that Canadians know the importance of standing up for each other. That's why Canadian taxpayers bought the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, TMX, to be able to get Albertan oil to new markets. That was an investment that all Canadians made, that the Alberta government is making billions of dollars off of, because in what was a very difficult decision, the federal government, we made the decision to purchase and build and complete that pipeline. That's an example of all Canadians standing up for Alberta and getting it done. So yes, premiers should be advocating for their own industries, their own country, their own communities, but they should also put their country first, as every single premier except Danielle Smith did. Now, I could point to any number of those premiers and point out lots of moments in which they have points of disagreement with me. From Doug Ford to Scott Moe to Tim Houston to even David Eby and Wab Kinew and others. There's all sorts of disagreements we're going to have. But when push comes to shove, every single one of them are Canadians first. And yes, they're going to look out for their communities, but they also know that looking out for all of us is what everyone in their communities expect us to do. And on top of that, I think it's very clear that right now, Pierre Poilievre, who wants to be Prime Minister for all Canadians, has a choice to make. Either he stands up to fight for all Canadians alongside all premiers and the federal government that are doing that.
Except for Danielle Smith.
Or he chooses to stand with Danielle Smith, Kevin O'Leary, and ultimately Donald Trump.
See, he took 2.5 minutes to talk about unity before he said, you know that Danielle Smith's a traitor. We're all Canada first. And Danielle Smith and maybe Pierre Poilievre, maybe him too, right? Unbelievable stuff. Canada first? This is rich coming from these people. Do they mean China first? Because it's not Canada first. Do they mean Gaza first? Do they mean anybody they can import first? The World Sikh Organization, do they mean them first? Because it certainly isn't Canada first. We're building houses to import people. We're not building houses for young Canadians. There are no young Canadians. Nobody's having babies except the people who are being imported. Are you kidding me? Holy smoke. Jason says, you created what you referred to as the world's first post-national state. You also created the Canadian. You also stated that the Canadian identity doesn't exist. Therefore, how could you or anyone sitting next to you possibly identify as being Canadian? And since our national identity has been destroyed, I would like to tell you, that I no longer identify as Canadian. I'm an Albertan, and we will do what we have to do to protect our patch of land. So you can publicly lambaste Danielle Smith all you want, but we're on her side on this. She's building a relationship with Trump because she recognizes where Canada is heading and understands that a strong relationship with the United States might be our only saving grace. I don't agree with her on everything, but I completely agree with her on this, and I'm thankful that she recognizes how dire the situation really is. Canada is fragmented into nearly separate nations, and you have nobody to blame for this but yourself. Leave now, like you promised. The longer we have to see and hear you, the further Canada deteriorates. And Justin Trudeau says, the premiers and I might be from different parties and different parts of the country, but we're Canadians first. And rich coming from him, right? Rich, because he's destroyed this post-national state. Danielle Smith says, how about this for Team Canada approach? 1, stop threatening the livelihoods of tens of thousands of Albertans and Canadians via an energy export tax or ban. 2, immediately start construction on the Northern Gateway and Energy East pipelines to diversify our customer base to Europe, Asia, and our own country. 3, tell Germany, Japan, and the rest of the world that there is, in fact, a business case for Canadian oil and gas to be sold to them. 4, repeal the unconstitutional and job-killing production cap electricity rate regulations and C-69. 5, treat with respect and as an equal partner the Alberta taxpayer that have been transferring hundreds of billions to Quebec, the Maritimes, and even Ontario for decades. Let's start there on building our Team Canada approach, shall we? And I think also it's interesting, C-63 is the censorship bill, right? And that's a linchpin. They need that. C-69. These are all... I don't think it's a mistake, right? There's 3s and 6s, and versions of 3s and 6s all over the place, right? And that's not coincidental. CBC Watcher says, James Moore, if the Prime Minister of this country knows that there's disunity around the statement, why do you have to have a statement out there, put a statement that there are divisions between the provinces and the federal government? So yeah, these guys are talking. We're going to listen to 2 minutes of this. They're talking about how this highlights weakness. There's always division. There's always people saying, this isn't the right move. We shouldn't do this, whatever, no matter what you do. And it's interesting and noteworthy that Justin Trudeau is trying to highlight the divisions here rather than trying to bring people together. He's well past his due date. He's well past his best before date. Like this guy needs to get kicked out, right? If this was garbage day, he'd be going in the trash. Here we go.
The government, you're part of this new group now trying to pull business and labor together to respond to whatever comes from the U.S. These fault lines I don't think anybody wants to put any kind of an export tax on any kind of product. But for a threat to work, it's got to look credible. Does it look credible if Poilievre, Smith, and others are not on board with what all the premiers and the prime minister want to say?
It's a problem, and the obligation and the responsibility of the prime minister of this country, whether it's Justin Trudeau or Pierre Poilievre, the obligation of the prime minister of this country is to put Canada in the best possible position to move forward with regard to future negotiations over tariffs, over the future CUSMA agreement when that comes up in 2026. And what I don't understand about this whole process and the story as it's unfolded is, why would you have a first minister's meeting with the prime minister and all the premiers there at the table? And I know Danielle Smith zoomed in, but they're all there. Typically in these kinds of settings, a statement or a joint statement is agreed to well before the meeting is gavelled into order. Yeah. And you know what the statement is ahead of time. If the prime minister of this country knows that there's disunity around the statement, why do you have to have a statement that exposes Canada's divisions? When we negotiated the FTA back in 1988 and 89, and then there were divisions between the provinces and the federal government. That was true with NAFTA as well. It was true with the USMCA or CUSMA as well. There are always divisions within country. We're a confederation with different constituent parts that have different stresses and needs and demands. And that's fine and normal. It happens in the United States as well. The obligation of the prime minister who sits atop of these debates is to make sure that everybody is together and that Canada's bargaining and negotiating position is maintained whole and that we're seen to be united. Why would they go forward with a statement knowing that Alberta wasn't comfortable with it? That's irresponsible and it weakens Canada. This is on Justin Trudeau. We can say what we want about Danielle Smith and whether she should have signed it or not. It was irresponsible to have a statement that everybody didn't agree with, as we are just days away from Donald Trump imposing these tariffs, and now we've exposed a wound that he can exploit. Stupid, irresponsible statecraft by Justin Trudeau.
Wasn't that exposed?
Hey, hold on. Yeah, no, it wasn't. So very interesting stuff. Stupid, irresponsible statecraft. I think that is accurate and describes Justin Trudeau accurately as well. Mark Miller says, either Poilievre stands up to fight for all Canadians alongside all premiers, but it's not all premiers, and the federal government that are doing that, or he chooses to stand up with Danielle Smith, Kevin O'Leary, and ultimately Donald Trump. So he's highlighting Justin Trudeau's position on this. Mark Miller is a yes man through and through, and it's just interesting how they're trying to position this. The reason they went forward with the divisive communication after the ministers' meeting is because Trudeau wanted to utilize that in order to cudgel Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre and to align them with Kevin O'Leary and Donald Trump. And so crazy stuff, man. It's political, like bare knuckle boxing at this point in time. Let's move on just a little bit. Here's Trudeau, and Side of a Bench says, why are you here wasting money on security and travel if you're not campaigning? I'm great. I'm awesome. The citizens must be reminded I'm still their prime minister. It's 2 minutes. I don't really want to listen to more Trudeau. So Trudeau's campaigning. Like, he's doing a farewell tour and people are asking him, like, what are you doing? And he's just being his typical a-hole self. So we'll just move on. We've got a lot to talk about with Carney, and I don't want to spend any more time on Trudeau than I have to. And I've already made my point about Smith. So let's move on. Catherine says, every Canadian should read this several-year-old article by Peter Foster about Mark Carney. A very good warning. It definitely won't be pleasant. Like the back of a Volkswagen Beetle. National Post is reporting, and I already read some of this, but it says Mark Carney, man of destiny, wants to revolutionize society. It won't be pleasant. What Carney ultimately wants is a technocratic dictatorship justified by climate alarmism. Yeah. Mark Carney has announced his candidacy for the Liberal Party leadership and Prime Minister. Originally published on June 5th, 2021, this in-depth Peter Forrester column provides a unique look into Mark Carney's ideas, particularly as expressed in his book, Values, Building a Better World for All. In his book, Mark Carney, former governor both of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, claims that Western society is mortally rotten and that it has been corrupted by capitalism, which has brought about a climate emergency that threatens life on Earth. This, he claims, requires rigid controls on personal freedom, industry, and corporate funding. Carney's views are important because he is a UN Special Envoy on climate action and finance. He's also an advisor both to British Prime Minister Johnson on the next big climate conference in Glasgow and to Prime Minister Trudeau. Since the advent of, so he's a handler. He's a WEF handler who makes sure that the two leaders of two of the Commonwealth countries are on board with climate response and taxpayer dollars for it, right? Like, I don't look at this and think to myself, oh, good, they're saving us. I look at this and think to myself, these rascals are stealing, robbing us blind. That's all I think. Like, this is not, if people thought about it the way I think about it, it would be like a James Bond level criminal syndicate running things. And we're all just suckers who don't think critically about anything and just go, okay, let's send money to change the weather to these guys who seem to spend it on private jets and like fancy dinners. We're getting taken and they're teabagging us with it, right? And we just don't even question it. And it's so weird. And if you do question it, the consequences if you do question it. Since the advent of the COVID pandemic, Carney has been front and center in the promotion of a political agenda known as the Great Reset or the Green New Deal or Build Back Better. All are predicated on the claim that COVID and its disruption of the global economy provided a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity not just to regulate climate, but to frame a more fair, more diverse, more inclusive, more safe, and more woke world. Carney draws inspiration from, among others, Marx, Engels, and Lenin, but the agenda he promotes differs from Marxism in two key respects. First, the private sector is not to be expropriated, but made a partner in reshaping the economy and society. Second, it does not make a promise to make the lives of ordinary people better, but worse. Carney's Brave New World will be one of severely constrained choice, less flying, less meat, more inconvenience, more poverty. Assets will be stranded. Used gasoline-powered cars will be unsaleable. Inefficient properties will be unrentable, he promises. So, can't wait. Yay, Canada. We're signing up for what now? And they don't want to talk about any of this. Stephen says Carney is a wickedly dangerous man hoping to curtail individual freedom in order to achieve his views of what the world needs. He makes the WEF look like libertarians. Independent social media will expose his goals through examination of his own writings. Debate, not dictate. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things he's already said that people are like, wait a second, what? And yeah, wait a second, what? Here's National Post. If the ship that is Canada starts sinking, and it's been sinking, it's sitting alarmingly low in recent years, most of us are going down with it. Not Carney, who has and always will have a premium life raft. Yeah, he could just go to England or go anywhere else, right? Go to Abu Dhabi, go wherever he wants. And I mean, he's a former Bank of England, Bank of Canada guy. I'm sure he'd be able to walk into a board somewhere and have money. Like he's not going to be looking. He's not going to be struggling for his next meal, is what I'm saying. Mike Bloomberg is excited to endorse Mark Carney. I've got this a second time later in the series of tabs, so apologies for the duplicate. But he says, I'm excited to see Mark Carney running for Canadian Prime Minister. His deep understanding of people, markets, and public service, combined with his integrity and proven leadership, has made a meaningful impact globally. Mark is a leader who pairs vision with action and has a strong blah, blah, blah. I don't care. It's interesting to me that foreign people like Mike Bloomberg, who also has recruited the mayors of Ontario and I think all of Canada to go to his climate change conferences, is endorsing Mark Carney, right? This is foreign interference. If he was a Russian oligarch, people would have a huge problem with it. But because he's an American oligarch who believes in climate change and has deep ties with municipalities all across Canada, people turn a blind eye. Weird, right? Super duper weird. Mark Carney says, I'm in. What a weird, he also stole his logo. But the I'm in thing just flashes me back to my early 20s when we were making fun of people. And it's like, this is the worst thing you want. Are you in? I'm in. Right? This is the worst conversation you want to have, man. You don't know? And I remember having a conversation about this in the bar when I was 22 or something like that. I thought it was ridiculous. And I'm like, seriously? This is your slogan? I'm in? We did have to ask. I'm not sure. Troman says, here's the Mark Carney logo. So the actual one is just like a white background, I guess, which is ironic because he doesn't like that color, it seems. And then here's one where the Canadian flag is on fire and everything is on fire behind him. Mark Carney's in. I'm sure he is. Yuck. Stacey says, starting a campaign and stealing a company's logo is right on brand for the Liberals. Met Credit says, that's a beautiful logo, Mark, but we're apolitical. So could you stop using our logo, Mark Carney? He's not going to stop using the logo. He's going to pay them for it. House of Commons staffer says, did anyone actually see Mark Carney get out of a Rolls-Royce limo? So yesterday afternoon, I saw the internet going absolutely bonkers, and I didn't see any pictures. Absolutely bonkers because Mark Carney apparently showed up to the leadership announcement in a stretch Rolls-Royce limo. Maybe he did. I could believe it, right? Totally, I could believe it. And so House of Commons staffer says, does anybody see Mark Carney get out of this limo? And House of Commons staffer says, apparently not. Glenn says, this is all so dumb. I spoke to the driver of the limousine seen at the Mark Carney event. He said he was sent to the same facility around 11 a.m. local for a pickup, not a drop-off. Carney event started at 1 p.m. Edmonton time. The driver has never heard of Mark Carney. Seems like, I don't know. I'm not sure if I believe that. Here is Kian, and he says, breaking, a Rolls-Royce has arrived at Mark Carney's leadership announcement. I don't think Mark Carney got out of the Rolls-Royce, but there's a whole bunch of hubbub about the Rolls-Royce. And so there was a Rolls-Royce there. It doesn't seem like it was holding Mark Carney, but weird, right? So there's that to consider. House of Commons staffer again says, giving prominence to known thief George Shahal and the honorable member for Gaza is a bold choice. These are the people that Mark Carney represents. Oh, his teeth. In the ad, in the I'm in ad, his teeth are still terrible. Like people were like, oh, maybe he got his teeth cleaned up. They're not. No, it's still terrible. I can't even really look at it. It's still terrible. It doesn't take away from the overall terribleness of the ad itself either, but it's like everything else is white and Mark Carney's teeth are not. And so like all of that's weird. There's so many weird things going on. Nobody here in this crowd really looks, like from Canada. It's so weird. Canada Proud says the person introducing Mark Carney doesn't know Mark Carney. She says, I've never met him. I just Googled him this morning, but he's going to need prayers. Here we go.
I would like to say a special prayer for Mr. Carney, because he's going to need prayers to be strong. I just met him today. I have never met him, but I Googled him. I would like to...
I just met him today. I never met him before, I think she meant to say. I just Googled him. Oh, okay. He's going to need prayers. Wow. This whole thing's a mess. Now, here's Mark Carney. This is Cat Canada. She says, the people in the front row behind Carney during his presser today made it look like he was in a different country. There you go. Yeah, it does. It looks like a mix from a foreign country somewhere where he's the bank of their country too, governor, right? Ryan Garrett says Mark Carney is not ready to be a politician. This is also not the messaging Canadians want to hear. This guy is depressing. Of course, he had to bring in climate change. Give this guy the hook. I've got a couple of minutes of Mark Carney. His speaking is not up to snuff. He is not an engaging speaker. There are long pauses where there shouldn't be long pauses. Sometimes you can have a long pause where you can tell that they're thinking. You know, the person's like, I've got to think about this question, like, long pause, right? And you can forgive it as an audience person because you're like, okay, I understand that you're thinking about this. There was a long pause that Elon Musk did, and he was like going to say something, and then he was like, he didn't say it, and then he kind of moved around in his seat, and then he started answering the question. And audiences forgive that. Long pauses like what Carney does just sound awkward, right? Okay, so here's some. I don't know if the long pause is in this one. I think he does do one or two long pauses in this one, but there's one specifically that I'm thinking of. I'll try and mention it when I see it. Here's the first video of Mark Carney.
Old times, my friends, are over.
The old times are over. Hold on. I want him to say that one more time. This is not an engaging way listen, everybody. Remember the good old days? They're done. The good old days are done, and they're never coming back. Like, seriously, dude.
Old times, my friends, are over. Our times are anything but ordinary.
This is it. This is the pause.
System, it's not working as it should. and it's not working as it could. People are anxious. No wonder. Too many are falling behind. Too many young people can't afford a home. Too many people can't find a doctor. And then we're living through the two biggest technological revolutions since they split the atom. And our climate is changing in ways that threatens livelihoods from Fort Mac to Fort Smith. And then on top of that, as George just mentioned, in just 4 days, the United States will swear in Donald Trump as their 47th president, a man who threatens economic force on his closest, most steadfast allies, including Canada. No.
Well, that's what's happening. And economic forces, we put ourselves in that situation. The people that you support put us in that situation. David says, a totally manufactured candidate, Mark Carney, delivered a campaign speech that was about as inspirational as a ride on a subway. The crowd looked like it was responding to signs that read applause. This is a little bit longer. Carney claims that even though they're down, the Liberals are going to win the next election. Not everyone is a Liberal yet, but it's a process, he says. This guy is delusional, but it does signal to me that there is already a deal in place to push the election to October. Yes, that's what they want. They want to pass C-63. They desperately need to pass C-63. If they can't pass it, then they can't win and they lose over the long term. They know that. So that's why it's important. Here is, it's a minute 48. Yeah, we'll watch the beginning part. Here we go.
I want to say how grateful I am to the many, many Liberals, many Canadians, who aren't all Liberals yet, but, part of the process.
That was ad-libbed. He wanted to speak to everybody, but he just said Liberals, and he misspoke, but he ad-libbed that, okay?
The many, many Canadians who have reached out and are already helping and have offered help. And to my fellow Liberals, I commit we're all wearing the same sweater. I'll work hard to earn your trust and your partnership. And I'm coming into this match, coming into this game, knowing that we are well behind. But we're getting warmed up, and we're going to head out in that third period, and we're going to win.
Delusional. Absolutely delusional. Bruce says, Mark Carney just told Canadians that the Canada we know and love is over and that hard times are ahead for Canada. This is the Liberal Messiah? Yeah. Really? Canada Proud says Mark Carney refuses to take any questions from the media after announcing his bid for Liberal leadership. Apparently he got shamed into answering a question. I think I have a tab talking about that in a minute. Here is what happened with the press. Sean says Carney camp was checking media IDs on the way into his announcement. Some people are not being allowed in. Heard a man in the lobby calling police. So that's weird.
Who are you? I'm an accredited media. I'm a member of the press gallery of the Alberta Legislature. I would like Carney to report the news just like anyone else. Thank you. Why are we not welcome? Thank you.
Okay, so Kean puts his foot in the door so he can't lock them in there, because I think they were locked in there at some point. And Kean says the Mark Carney campaign has blocked access to journalists after we showed him the invitation we received last night. We're now locked in the foyer, and some guy just exclaimed that they're called the police on 7 journalists who are extremely confused. Yes, very, very strange. And Kean says, update, Mark Carney has just ordered 5 armed officers to remove 3 journalists from the press conference. All 3 of us were accredited last night. Nobody on the campaign would identify themselves or explain why. So that's weird. Western Standard's reporting the same. Cowardly Carney kicks Western Standard reporter out of his news conference. Kean says, look, I'm trying to be reasonable. Carney needs to answer simple questions about his recurring and close friendship with child sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. That's what I came to ask, and I'll do my job no matter how many officers they throw at the free press. And so that's pretty wild stuff. And then this guy came in. I don't know who this guy is, but some Sikh dude came in, and Kean says, this guy was behaving like an absolute child and was physically restraining my leg in this door. When I tried to pull it out, he stopped me. When I tried to film, he tried to stop me. Clown show. So honestly, I would not be as calm as Kean is here. I'm sure Kean has some kind of legal recourse, and he'll be able to enact that, but I would not be nearly as calm as Kian is here. Really. Like, not that I'm a hot-headed person, but I just feel like I would not be zen in this moment.
Kian Bexley here with the counter signal. Kian Bexley here with the counter signal.
Yeah, so the guy's like trying to stop him from filming. Mackenzie Gray says Mark Carney was coy about, okay, so he was shamed into answering questions, and this is a question about the carbon tax that he was asked, and he wouldn't answer. And it's very clear that he wants a carbon tax dictatorship, and that's kind of what he's going for. And so he's going to be coy about it, right? So Mackenzie says Mark Carney was coy about what he would do with the carbon tax if he becomes prime minister, saying that he'd put out a comprehensive plan in the coming weeks. He was asked 3 times in French about it if he'd dump it, but he just referred to the plan that will come soon. If this is French, I haven't listened to it, so I'm not sure.
In English, please, quickly, I'm going to edit. Look, I've said for a long time that if you were going to take out the carbon tax, you should replace it with something that is at least, if not more, effective. And by effective, it's not just having the same impact in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it's making our companies more competitive, it's creating jobs, it's ensuring that Canadian households are made whole in terms of their finances. Because perception may be that it takes out more than the rebate provides, but reality is different. And Canadians...
Reality is what I say it is, okay? It's not what you guys know about your lives. It's what I decide that it is, okay? So I'm the new leader here. You'll listen to me. Brian Lilly says, why should anyone believe Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland on their respective plans to get rid of the carbon tax? They've spent years promoting it, not only existing, but going higher. So he says that it's going to go up to $80 to $160 a ton.
A lot of that. One thing we will also have, though, is, well, again, I think in order to accomplish what we need is that there will be, for a period of time, a rising price of carbon, either explicitly, for a long period of time, either explicitly or implicitly through regulation, that has the effect of a steady increase in the price of carbon. And that's a bit akin to having a rising value-added tax over time, which flows through to a lot of prices. And so the question is, how do you lean against that in terms of achieving inflation? It can be done, but it has to be watched. I think the central banks are able to anticipate, and particularly with credible and predictable climate policy, it's easier to address that. And so that, again, now there's lots of reasons why you want credible and predictable climate policy for a Green New Deal. So
Green New Deal, he loves it. So Carney's an absolute disaster, and there's still a few more tabs, so how much worse could he get? Bradshaw says, I think Carney underestimated Canadians. Mark thought Canadians would sit back and not look into him. Mark thought this would be so easy for him. Mark was wrong. Mark may fool the Liberals, but he's not fooling the rest of us. That's true. Dan says, Mark Carney nor the Liberal Party will be able to shake off the climate arrogance which pits them against most struggling Canadians. Carney and Freeland's unswerving commitment to the net zero agenda seals their fate with a public that's been made worse off by their economic vandalism. So he's trying to make the case that, listen, we, quote, make you whole by giving you refund checks, and those refund checks are more than the carbon tax takes out of the economy. And that's not true. It's simply not true. The carbon tax is inflationary, and it's driving up the cost of absolutely everything. And Carney's ignoring that and replacing it with his own narrative. It is simply narrative. It is not fact. And now we're fighting about that. That's what the election is going to be about, which is ridiculous. Ryan Gerritsen says, and carbon taxes were what the election was going to be about anyway, but it really should be corruption. It really should be everybody. Like, I don't think any political party should survive at this point. Anybody who's got a seat currently should not keep. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.